Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founder is Thomas Wharton, Jr., the first president of Pennsylvania. You see, Thomas Wharton was not quick to take up the revolutionary spirit. He was a wealthy merchant in Philadelphia. In fact, he was part of the Wharton family, one of many wealthy merchant families of Philadelphia who didn't really take a leading role in the revolution because they wanted to stay wealthy merchants of Philadelphia and didn't want to be on the losing side of things, and we're happy to just sit in with whoever was the winner. But for Thomas Wharton, it became too much to bear once the Boston Act was passed, suppressing the city of Boston and cutting off all trade with the outside world. Now, not all cities in America were as rebellious as Boston. Not every city was throwing tea in the harbor. Many colonies were simply not letting the tea ships arrive. Most colonial governors were okay with the people sending tea back out to sea and saying, just don't land here. We don't want any trouble. Boston, of course, wanted some trouble, and trouble they got. And when Boston was suppressed, that's when Thomas Wharton really started stepping up. He said, this is too much. They're starving these people out. They can come here and do this to Philadelphia. And he joined the Committee of Correspondence and quickly joined the Committee of Safety. The Committee of Safety was the one in charge of raising armies and preparing for war, essentially. And as such, Thomas Wharton eventually finds himself as president or chairman of the Committee of Safety. And when Declaration of Independence declares independence, Thomas Wharton is suddenly de facto governor of this state in rebellion, leader of a shadow government, for lack of a better term. So he does the right thing and quickly tells the state to write a constitution, and he oversees the creation of Pennsylvania's first government. Now, I'm not going to get too into it. Let's just say Pennsylvania's first government was very experimental, very democratic, way democratic, and didn't last very long. It only lasts about 13 years or so until it's changed. Now, Thomas Wharton does see the Constitution created, and in this position, he is elected the first president of Pennsylvania. At the time, they didn't use the term governor. Essentially, he was governor, but they called it president, and that sounds nice. So he was the first president of Pennsylvania. Now, he's president of Pennsylvania when the British come to Philadelphia and occupy Philadelphia. And it's kind of famous that the Continental Congress runs from Philadelphia and goes to York and then to Lancaster. It's not so famous that the Pennsylvania government also ran away from Philadelphia alongside the Continental Congress, and they end up in Lancaster. And this is suddenly when Thomas Wharton's story comes to an end, because Wharton, despite being in his early 40s, just suddenly dies. I actually have a quote from the vice president of Pennsylvania, George Bryant, who said, His Excellency Thomas Wharton died here very unexpectedly. I know that quote doesn't say a lot more than what I said, but it was very unexpected. He was a young, healthy man leading this government into exile. He evacuated the state government and unfortunately passes away. And it's kind of a stark reminder that in the 18th century, as well as through most of human history, death was just a natural part of life. It still technically is, but people would just kind of die pretty frequently. And sadly, Thomas Wharton is a victim of this. And sadly, his legacy doesn't carry on. Until today, we made this video, and now you know a little bit more about Thomas Wharton. We can carry on his legacy because he probably would have been a pretty large role player in the creation of the federal government in the future, because his role as a leader of Pennsylvania, one of the most important populated states, and as a merchant in Philadelphia, what was then really the biggest city in the colony. So that's the story of Thomas Wharton. I hope you learned something today about him and the exile of the state government of Pennsylvania. If you did, hit like. If you're new here, subscribe for American Revolution content all week long.